noise.
History is filled with tales of men and women who have organized coups, successfully and unsuccessfully. But one thing that I've come to realize that is very much in common with almost all coups is that all of them were organized to oust an oppressive regime. But in our story today, it's something very interesting. The regime that came in as a result of the coup was the most oppressive regime, at least in my opinion. And that is what we're going to highlight today. Hi, welcome back to the African Footprints podcast with me,
TJ Enos Airo. And today, we're looking at, or taking the historical lens to look at Uganda. And our particular attention is drawn to none other than Idi Amin Dada.
I am most influential leader in Africa, in the continent, and also I am a leader who speaks the truth. I changed from Israeli alliance because Israeli are criminals and that they are not trusted people. They don't tell the world the truth. They were taken to Palestine as refugees, and then they changed Palestine to become a state of Israel by force of arms given to them by Americans.
When we look at the history of Uganda, around 1924-1925, as historians would place it, a man was born in the northwestern district or northwestern region of Uganda, the Kakwa region. And as somebody from Kakwa would have greeted you, Na Arome. That means hello in Kakwa. Well, Idi Amin Dada grew up in the Kakwa region with people of that ethnic affiliation. And as he grew up, there was little to no education, but he grew up just teaching himself and just embracing the ambition that was within. His ambition placed him in joining the King's African Rifles. This was the regiment that was set up to ease the rule of British colonial rule during the colonial period. And what they do basically, they would suppress any sort of insurrection that would rise against the British colonial rule. So Idi Amin Dada joined in 1946 the KAF, and he joined in the rank of a cook. But as ambition would place it, Idi Amin Dada grew in rank, and he joined the rank of an officer. He was amongst the few Ugandan or even African people who are able to join that rank of an officer. Well, his day-to-day operations in terms of suppressing insurrection would be the exertion of force, brutality. And this was capitalized by the fact that he had the tools with him that were given to him by the British colonial rule to suppress such insurrection. And Idi Amin Dada, in the year 1961, when Uganda had gained its independence, I remember this conversation that I was having with a friend earlier on, and even from history books, that Walter Coates, the departing governor, whispered in Milton Obote's ear and told him, watch out for this one. Because Idi Amin Dada had grown in such ambition and he was a ticking time bomb. If only Milton Obote had heeded to such advice. Well, moving forward, Milton Obote promoted Idi Amin Dada to the leader of the army and even the Air Force. And this would lead him to build such a vast network of people who are loyal to him, Idi Amin Dada. Well, the year is 1971, January 25th. Idi Amin Dada, behind closed doors, was strategizing of how to overthrow Milton Obote's government. And indeed, he was successful. And on January 25th, 1971, Idi Amin Dada overthrew Milton Obote. Well, people were hopeful that Idi Amin Dada's government would bring out hope, would bring out the aspirations of the Ugandan people, that the Ugandan people would live in prosperity and even posterity for generations to come. So there was jubilations and celebrations on this fateful day as people were looking to Idi Amin Dada as the leader who would lead them to the proverbial promised land. Well, that was not the tale, because 6 months later, there was a huge massacre, a massacre against Milton Obote's affiliates or people who are linked with his ethnic group, the Acholi and the Langi. They were massacred in a barracks. And the Western powers got wind of this and sent such investigative journalists to just try and unearth what had happened in that massacre. When the two journalists came, they also got lost. Well, history books would tell you that inquiries were made. Idi Amin also made promises to the families of these journalists, including investigative journalists known as Straw. But their families were disappointed to learn that those inquiries were just mere fables. Well, in 1972, Idi Amin Dada, also in a populist move, decided to oust the Asian people from Uganda. And he went to the radio station claiming, "I have had a dream." And he told them, in this dream he saw such an illustration where a cow was being milked, but this cow was not being fed. And he used that illustration to speak of the Ugandan economy, that the Asians were milking the Ugandan economy, but they were not feeding the Ugandan economy.
The Uganda is still not yet independent. Uganda will be independent after this, my decision, after I want to see that the whole Kampala street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black, and administration in those shops is run by the Ugandans.
Would you like to get all Asians out, really, sir?
Yes, they must go to their country.
Even nationals of Uganda?
If they want to go, they are welcome to go.
What prompted the sub-people if they don't go by the time that...
I think they will be sitting like they are sitting on the fire. I will tell you this. You just wait after 3 months.
What will you do to them?
Okay, you will see.
You said you wanted Uganda.
I think they will not sit comfortable here in Uganda. I will tell you this. I must actually tell you the truth.
And this populist move led to the people really jeering or even aligning themselves with Idi Amin and calling for the removal of the Asian people from Uganda. And what they didn't realize, that the Asian people had networks and even they were important in the day-to-day trades that were going on. And after the ousting of the Asian people from the Ugandan territory, what happened later was that the Ugandan economy went on a downward trajectory. And the people who inherited the shops and the stalls that were owned initially by Asian people could not really manage these things because they lacked the necessary experience to conduct such affairs. Well, Idi Amin Dada, of course, had other people to blame, always deflecting all sorts of rebuke or even ridicule. Well, people were unsettled, including Charles Abure. Charles Abure was a brigadier in Idi Amin Dada's army. And Charles Abure was also his cousin, somebody he'd grown up together with. And Charles Abure, as Idi Amin Dada would have told you if he was here, he regarded him as a brother. But Charles Abure decided amongst his own officials also to strategize on how they would oust Idi Amin Dada. In 1974, 23rd March and 24th, Charles Abure started this coup and captured strategic points, including Kampala and other radio stations, and went to radio stations to announce that indeed he was the rightful president and that Idi Amin Dada's regime had been ousted. Well, Idi Amin Dada consolidated his forces and barricaded around where Charles Abure was situated. And it is said that Charles Abure committed suicide, but most people know that he was assassinated. Well, this was the embodiment of the sort of leadership that Idi Amin Dada stood for, that whenever and wherever the people would rise up in opposition or people would rise up to oppose the things that he would do, Idi Amin Dada would suppress any such insurrection. And he had torture houses and places where people would be kept for torture and for purposes of keeping the people silenced. Among such people was Bishop Luomo. Archbishop Luomo and other cabinet ministers had expressed themselves to Idi Amin Dada and told him that how you're leading the people of Uganda would lead to the detriment of the country of Uganda. And such opposition would be seen as dissent by Idi Amin Dada. And Idi Amin later on went to assassinate Archbishop Luomo. In 1976, Idi Amin Dada decides also to participate in the hijacking of a French airline from Entebbe, a clear picture of the type of leadership that did not consider even collaboration amongst international forces. Well, in 1978, previously East Africa community enjoyed harmonious living and people would coexist in a peaceful environment, Idi Amin Dada went against all odds and invaded Tanzania. His invasion of Tanzania was out of pocket, out of wallet, as many would have told us. But Idi Amin Dada went ahead to try and rally his people around that Tanzania is the real enemy. Well, the enemy is really within. In 1979, Tanzania was able to suppress that invasion, and Idi Amin fled to Libya and later on to Saudi Arabia, where he settled until his death. Almost like a dog running away from the battlefield with its tail between its legs. Idi Amin Dada defeated, made shame of by the Tanzanian army. Well, this is the story of Uganda and the military coup that initially was seen as a hope for the Ugandan people that would bring prosperity and posterity, that would bring the people of Uganda to the proverbial promised land. But this gentle giant, Idi Amin Dada, would end up being a fierce ogre in the eyes of many. And within his regime, or within his tenure, within the 8 years that he was able to lead the people of Uganda, about 300,000 Ugandans are reported to have been missing or dead or maimed or killed within the tenure of this tyrant. All that glitters is not gold. And what had started off with hope ended up in dismay. But till now, we thank God that Uganda has risen from the ashes of its previous regimes and has risen up to take up its rightful place. Well, thank you for joining us today on the African Footprints podcast. It has been an amazing time to just take you through the historical lens with a particular attention to Uganda. My name is TJ Enos Airo. Like, subscribe, and share this content.